Hello everybody, this is Shannon with Beads and Babble, back with another tutorial. This is going to center around these particular earrings here. We'll be hand forging the frame and attaching all the components and making the jump rings. And if you haven't seen my jump ring making video, I do have it on the channel, but I'll go over it here real quick. It's very simple, very easy to do. And we'll be making the jump rings out of the same gauge wire as we're making the earring frames out of. So you can make your own earring frames. Now you're not limited to the shape either. You can do square, round, with very minimal tools. You can use old pill bottles, dowels, markers, and stuff like that to make the different shapes. And I do go over that in my jump ring tutorials, but on a different size scale, of course. So we will be making another matched pair of earrings just like these in today's tutorial. You like my Tennessee dish. I got this at a local market here, handmade market. I just loved it. So what we'll be needing today as far as tools goes is we will need a bench block, steel bench block, a chasing hammer with a domed face, not a flat-faced chasing hammers are for striking tools, not for forging metal or forming it. Some kind of a dead blow mallet, nylon, rawhide, any of that will work. Rubber, just to shape the metal without marring it. We'll need some nippers. We'll need some round nose pliers. You don't necessarily need these. You can do the same with the round nose pliers, but these are a 6-step bell making plier that comes in really handy, and they're very affordable. So if you don't have one of these, it's a great beginner tool to have, and it'll carry you through your jewelry making career very nicely. I use mine all the time. You'll need a pair of flat nose, either 2 pairs of flat nose or a flat nose and bent nose. I like pairing these two together. They work great for me. Whatever works for you. You'll need 2 pairs of pliers for opening and closing, jump rings, and ear wires. I also pulled out a pair of vinyl jaw pliers. As you can see, I probably need to change the jaws on these, which they do allow you to change them out once they become pretty worn, which these are. I use them a lot. These also are non-marring. A Sharpie for marking. Also a file, or you can also use a round burr tool, a cut burr, excuse me, for taking off any kind of burrs off the wire, sharp, or forming it. It's always handy to have. This is a simple half round number 2 file. So it's got a flat side and a round side, which will take you a long, like if you're going to purchase a file, a round, half round file is great. Number 2 is generally a really good one. And then it's just on a dowel. And I'm going to use actually this dowel handle to form the opening of the ear wires, which you'll see. So it kind of serves 2 purposes. We will be using 6 gauge brass wire. This is a jeweler's brass, so it's a little different than regular brass, which tends to be real yellow. Take it out of here so you can see. Maybe. All right. So as you can see the difference in the wire, this one has more of a gold tone to it, which they call a red brass or a jeweler's brass, and then this is a yellow brass. I tend to like the jeweler's brass because it looks more gold tone. And you can also, if you want, use copper 6 gauge for this project as well. It just depends on what you're going for look-wise. Either one will work. It's just important that it's a 16 gauge round wire. We'll be cutting 2 5-inch lengths of the 16 gauge wire here. And then you're also going to need 2 ball head pins. You can use, they don't have to be ball. They can also be just the regular head pins if you want. I like the way the ball looks, so I'm doing that in conjunction with the ear wire that I've chosen, which is a pre-made one. You can make your own. I also have a video on how to do that. It's actually a short on my YouTube channel using the 6-stage belling pliers. It's really easy. I would make it out of 20 gauge wire, round wire. You can go up to 18 gauge, but that's kind of big for some people's ear. So I would stick with probably 20 gauge is a pretty universal one for making ear wires. So you can choose your either pre-made or you can hand make your ear wires, whatever you choose to do. You'll also need to grab a selection of assorted beads of your choice because it's just going to form the dangle in the middle. So you can do this however you want. You can use odds and ends, you can use seed beads, you can go the entire length up the dangle if you want. That is really up to your liking, whatever you want it to look like. So I used very minimal beads to kind of make this more beginner friendly and cost effective for people, because I know Mother's Day is coming up very soon. These are really pretty earrings if you wanted to make your mother or your mother-in-law a pair of earrings, or a friend. Be very easy to do. So I've already, make sure that's flush. I've already cut a flush into this wire, which is always good to start out with a flush end. I'm going to cut 2 5-inch lengths. This is going to form the bead frame. Then I'm going to come back and cut this end off because it's sharp. And brass is a little bit stiffer than copper by its own nature. So is another reason I like to, because you really have to work harden copper up because it's a very soft, pliable metal. I also forgot to mention you'll need a ruler for any kind of measurements today. Or if you have one of these bead mats, you can use the ruler down here. Sometimes it's hard for me to get it all in the frame, so I brought out a ruler. Okay, so we're going to make a mark at 2.5 inches, which is exactly halfway point on this wire. This is where we're going to initiate a bend in the wires. We're going to do that with our round nose pliers. Just put that marking. I'll go in a little bit closer so you guys can see what I'm doing here. I'll zoom back out here also. So here's my Sharpie marker. I'm going to just press and hold the bent nose pliers there as I bring it up and just squeeze those ends together just like that. And I'm going to do it again on this one, same exact way. They don't get quite even, we can trim them too. It's not, it's not a horrible thing if it doesn't, because we're going to bring in the bench block as well. And the nylon mallet. Sorry if this gets loud, protect your ears. And we're going to kind of close off this gap. And turn it and do it the other way. This is just going to give us that point that we're looking for. And we'll probably even come back in with some pliers and squeeze it even tighter. I'm just going to turn it over. And this will work harden the brass. So I'm going to come in with the flat nose pliers and squeeze that even a little tighter if I can. Just get it as tight as you want. We're going to open it up again anyway, but we are just getting it to get the crease in the metal, get the shape we want. All right, so now we have two wires that look like this. They're pretty close. If you have any like different in length here, you can come back in with your nippers and just nip it off so you have them exactly the same length. That's just what I'm doing right now. I'm taking very little off. And then you can also file them there to take off any burrs if you need to. Just fill them. A lot of times you can just run your hands over and you'll know if they have any burrs on them. But a couple swipes of the file will take off any burrs it has. These won't be touching the skin or anything, but I always like to take any sharp parts off if they're there. So, and I apologize for the shape of my hands. I've been gardening and I know I should wear gloves, but I just haven't. I got to feel the dirt in my plants. I know it's horrible for my hands, and I pay for it in the end. And before we after getting off on that tangent, before we go and open these up to form our earring frame, we are going to bend identical loops in the end, and that's where these bell making pliers come in really handy. So you're going to, on the smallest mandrel here, we're going to take and squeeze both ends of the wire in between, and then I'm going to just push the metal around. I'm going to let the pliers do the work for me. And then I'm going to come over to the back side and pull them over a little bit more. We'll close them up a little bit more. Oops, get this back in here. I'm just using the smallest round of these pliers here to make the loops. And then I'm going to do the same with this one. This just helps make them the same rather than doing them individually. Yeah, they can slide a little bit, so make sure you hold on pretty tight with these pliers. Like that one just slid, but if it does, just come back in and grab it. My hand strength is not what it used to be, I'll tell you. All right. And then we can also straighten them up as well. So now that we have two, I don't know why I keep setting stuff over that way, wires that look like that, we're going to come in, I'll bring this one in here sample, and we're going to open them up just a little bit. And then I'm going to take the dowel side of my file here and push it down. I'm trying to do it as evenly as possible. And you can use this point, since it's been work hardened a little bit, to kind of get your roundness. And don't worry if you bend it or anything. We'll be taking care of that shortly. Let's work on it. And I actually like an organic shape. I'm not into symmetrical as much as I like organic. Probably comes from nature. I really like nature and the way everything is unique. So we're gonna make it something like that till we get it about that, and I'll tell you that's about a 1/2 inch wide, inside to inside, and it's going to open up a little wider as we work hard and flatten the wire. So it'll open a little, so you don't need to open it up too much. We'll let the tools do that for us. I'm going to do the same to this one. I'm going to bring it down. I'm just pushing the wire up, and then I'm using this point to kind of bend it on each side, and then I'll compare it to the one I just did. I mean, getting it, you know, similar. It's probably not identical, but that is the beauty of handmade jewelry. I'm going to open this one up a little bit more, up towards the top. I hope everybody is enjoying the spring weather. I love spring, early summer. Like being able to be outside more than inside. All right. And you can use your fingers, of course, too. All right. So now I'm going to bring in the bench block again, and we are going to bring in, and I'm just kind of flattening this so it's fairly flat, and holding the two looped ends, I'm going to take the metal chasing hammer, and I'm going to flatten probably up just past the halfway point of the earring frame. And this will do, you know, this will widen it a little bit. It'll also give it some dimension, and it'll flatten the wire and work harden it. So it does a lot of, and I'm going to also flip it as I'm doing this. And I'm just slowly working my way up. I'm going to flip it again. You can do this however wide you want it. The more you hammer it, the thinner this is going to get and the flatter it's going to get. And as you can see, it's kind of it's widening this part and bringing this part together, which is exactly what we want. You can also take your Sharpie and mark to a point where you want to flatten and where you want to stop. Or you can do what I'm doing and basically eyeball it. So I'm happy with that one. Now I'm going to grab the other one. And I'm going to do the exact same thing. And as you can see, I'm not applying a lot of force. You do not need to. And see how it's shaping a little bit, but we'll fix it with the dowel. Or your fingers. Just need to widen this upper part a little bit more. And don't be scared to experiment and do other textures on the metal if you want some. You can use the ball peen portion to do little textures on the wire as well. Give it some dimension as well. And then you can also straighten up your loops here. All right. That's what I'm going to do now. So here is where we're going to tighten up these loops so they're flush against the wire frame. And I'm just bending in and out like if you do open and close a jump ring. That's what I'm doing here. And then I'm just using my fingers And I'm going to straighten these out a little bit, because the wire will sometimes, as you're forging it with the hammer and the mallet or the bench block, it can twist it. But it's easily, you can manipulate it, the wires, so easily, which is great. And then I'm going to get it straight, and then I'm going to show you what I did here. So what I did is I just straightened out the form and tightened up the loops of the wire, so the loop is going all the way around and touching the frame wire. Then I'm going to do the same thing with this one. I'm just cleaning them up, making sure they are where they need to be. All right. Using my fingers for the most part if I need to straighten anything. Bending these out just a tad bit. This in so it's closed up against the frame wire. This is the most fiddly part of these earrings. I take that back. That's probably attaching the dangle along with the jump ring in between these. That was kind of a pain. Definitely worth it, but it was still a pain. All right. So we got two wires here that are fairly similar in shape. All right, now we're going to take the same 16 gauge wire. We're going to cut a flush in while the wire's still on the actual coil. I'm going to use the second largest barrel on the pliers here to make the jump rings that will connect the components together. And I'm going to start down here, and I'm just going to wrap. Do a small coil. You need literally 2 of these, but I usually, just for ease, I will do the entire barrel length or close to. And you'll end up with a coil like that. Now, using the flush side, which is this side here, you'll want to face the end here, this end that's open, and cut your jump rings. And then you're going to need to cut again, because that's not going to be flush. And then cut again. You're cutting your jump rings. Like I said, I have a tutorial on this, so you can definitely check out this channel. A little remnant there. So you should have flush ends here. That one's not, because that's where I cut the initial one, but over there. So I think I should have flipped those two. I think I showed you guys wrong there. That was horrible. Horrible demonstration. Should have flipped and flipped. So I've been out of practice. All right, so going to actually redo that. I should have flipped the pliers. Apologize. So I'm going to do that again. It'll just be a good demonstration. So we're going to take the second largest barrel and crimp that piece of wire with the flush in. And then we're just going to wind a coil onto the barrel. I apologize, I've been out of sorts lately. Still trying to get back into my groove. So flush side against there. So that will leave a flush in. And then you need to turn the pliers away to get a flush side on the other side of the jump ring that you'll be cutting. And then you need to flip it again. So you're constantly flipping these nippers. Flush side away, flush side again towards you, because you're cutting two flush ends on these jump rings. And then you have to cut this nipped end off so it's flush, and then away. And cutting a flush in. And another flush in. Get one more here. All right. These are still usable, but what's going to happen is you'll have a pinched in right here and then a flush in here, and it doesn't match up very nicely. It does not make a good seam. Unlike the ones I just did, which will, aside from that burr, they will have a flush and flush side. No pinched in, so they'll close up nicely. That's kind of a quick and dirty way to do jump rings that you want to do on the fly if you need to make some really quick. It's really nice. Okay, so now I'm going to go on to making the dangles, which will require cutting these down a little bit, these head pins down, because they're going to, you don't want them hanging too low that the beads are going to hit against the bottom. So you want it to be about right there. My sweet spot was at 2.5 inches, but you also have to consider that you're going to be making a loop at the end. So I cut mine to 1 3/4 of an inch. And then I marked also at 1/2 inch, because that's where I'm going to make the bend for the loop. So cutting this head pin, ball head pin, down to 1 3/4 of an inch. And then I marked it about 1/4 of an inch down from there in order to bring in my flat nose pliers and bend that. Oh, I don't want to bend it yet. Gosh, I almost did it again. There again. That's where I'm going to make the bend to make the connecting loop that goes into here. So now what you're going to do after you've cut this one down is you're going to string on your beads however you want them to be. I'm going to do an identical pair for this demonstration just to make it cohesive and correct. So what I used is a size 10 seed bead, check glass seed bead, a brass bead here, gives it a little bit of weight. This is a faceted glass bead, another brass bead, another 10-aught seed bead, and then a 2mm brass round bead here. Now this is where I'm going to bend at my Sharpie mark into a sharp angle, like an upside down L. Then I'm going to bring in my round nose pliers. And now you know, there's no measurements on here. You can make marks as to, so you can get consistent loops at the top. I kind of know where I need to be. And I'm going to pinch the end of this wire between the jaws of the round nose pliers at where I know I need to be in order to make the loop that I'm looking for. And then I'm going to curl it back towards me using the plier to do the work to make my loop at the end. And then you can straighten this all out with your flat nose pliers because, you know, these are very thin wires, so I think they're like 21 gauge. Now I'm going to do the same. So I'm going to measure this pin down. So 1 3/4 inches. And then I'm going to also mark it at 1.5 inches because that's where I'm going to bend, make my bend for the loop. Come on, Sharpie pin. My Sharpie's dying. Should have tested it. All right, and then I'm going to string on the beads. This is very quick tutorial. Or not, well, I said project. I should say project. And I promise I'll get back in the swing of things. I'm starting to get there, feeling much better, which has been nice. And when I bend, I make this bend. You want to make it pretty sharp because you're going to be rolling it back onto itself. So you want that angle fairly sharp. And I bend right at the beginning of the mark. All right, I'm going to make my loop again. It's actually really fun to make your own frames and do your own designs. You can even wire wrap beads into these frames. They're real fun to do. Second loop, and then what I'll do too, and it also helps work harden these head pins, is I'll take and squeeze, and it also will straighten it as well from when you do the bending of it. And then you can look at it, and you can also use your fingers too, but when you kind of pinch it with the steel pliers, it will also work harden these pins. You can take the vinyl nose pliers too and roll them onto it as well. That'll straighten them. I use these a lot for that. Okay, now we have our dangles. Okay, and we have these formed and shaped. This is the tricky part, maybe the more fiddly part. So I'm going to bring in my my bent nose and my flat nose here, and we're going to take one of these jump rings, and the inner diameter of this ring, if you already have pre-made ones, is 3 millimeters, the inner diameter. So it's the inside, not the outside. And that's what you're going to need. And I open it pretty wide. That's so I can get one loop in. And then I'm going to thread on the dangle. It's going to go in between. This is, like I said, a little bit fiddly, but not the worst. And then I'm going to close this up, working side to side to close it up till you feel that grind on there and you get that nice seam. To do the exact same with this one. So I'm opening that up really wide. That way then I don't have to struggle to get this in here. And then I'm going to thread the dangle on to the jump ring. And then I'm going to bring it around to get it, the other loop of the frame into the jump ring. And then I'm closing up that seam. How nicely that seam closes up when the two ends are flush. No gap or anything. So what I did there was took the jump ring, slid the first loop of the frame in, slid the dangle in between the two frame loops, and then the jump ring all the way through all three of them, so it's connected to all the dangle and the two frame loops. So the dangle will free flows between. And now you simply take your handmade or pre-made earring wires and you open them up. You drop the jump ring down on, and then these actually kind of open and close here. And then you can straighten that up to where, so it's going to hang right because it's going to face forward. The jump ring is the glue that holds the frame, the dangle, and the ear wire together. I'll do the same. This one looks like it's pretty open. I might be able to slide it on there. And the jump ring is just big enough to do its job without being overly large or taking away from the design of the earring, which is really minimalistic. But it's nice, and it's not too heavy either. These earrings are a good weight, so they have a good drape, but not so heavy that they would hurt your ears. And they're so pretty. I'm going to probably send these to work with my husband. He works with predominantly women at his job. He's a nurse, and when I have all this jewelry I've made, and so I'm going to send it to work with him so people can wear it. But yes, that is those in a nutshell. But you can do so much with this particular wire, this 16 gauge wire. It's a good weight and a good diameter for making frames for earrings and even necklaces because of its thickness. But it's not overly heavy or bulky, so it looks really nice, especially when you flatten it down and work harden it with the chasing hammer and the bench block. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. I'll be coming back with some more. I was hoping to get a Mother's Day tutorial out for Mother's Day gifts, but I'm not sure if I'm going to get to it, so I can't make any promises, but I'm working on some more tutorials that I will be uploading to the channel within the next few weeks. So, and until then, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll be seeing you.